Hello, CS3102. This is Anish from Cohort Eagleman, along with Abid from Cohort Dijkstra, and today we're going to talk about computing with city skylines. So for those of you who aren't familiar, City Skylines is a city builder and simulator, and IGN's review of it puts it way better than I ever could, so I'm just going to read off there. Playing as part mayor, part god king, with the power to arbitrarily bulldoze your simulated citizens' dreams and create schools with a click. Building a city from scratch is mostly conventional. Lay down roads, designate zones for residential, commercial, or industrial buildings, provide utility services, reap the tax boon, then repeat the cycle with new stuff that's been unlocked by your growing population hitting new milestones. And yeah, that almost perfectly sums up what the game is all about. So here I have a city with around 24,000 residents, as it says, and in this rather boring looking mega block I have some residential, some commercial, and some office buildings, and I have some train stations and train tracks going to this sort of little industrial area right here. So before we start building a computer in the game, I thought I'd go ahead and introduce the components in game which are going to be useful to us. So going from left to right, first up we have the windmill or the wind turbine. This is pretty self-explanatory. You just plop it down somewhere and it produces electricity if there's wind. One small caveat is that the way the game simulates it right now, the windmill does not produce any electricity if it is submerged, or like its base is submerged. This might seem like a random detail now, but it's going to be pretty useful later on. Next up we have the oil power plant. Again, as its name suggests, it is a power plant that runs off oil. However, what that name fails to include is that for this power plant to actually run and produce electricity, not only do you need oil, you also need an active water and sewage connection to the city's water and sewer systems. And next up, we have the water tower, which, once again, as its name suggests, provides a source of water to flat or higher up regions. And yeah, to actually pump the water up into the tower and for it to sort of have any water, this needs to have an active electricity connection. And then last but not least, we have the water drain pipe, or as is more popularly known, the sewage pipe, which forms the other end, so to speak, of the city's water and sewage system. And the sewage pipe also needs electricity to run. So here you have the windmill, which just produces electricity the moment you plop it down, but stops doing that when it gets submerged. The oil power plant, which produces electricity but only when it's connected to both water and sewage. The water tower, which pumps water but only when connected to electricity. And the sewage pipe, which pumps sewage only when connected to electricity. So now that we're familiar with the items we're going to use, let's go ahead and actually build, in this case, a NOR gate. So I'm going to start us off with these two sets of windmills right here, which are going to represent our two inputs. Let's call this one A and this one B. As you can see, there are wires going from the windmill to the rest of the circuit, but I have left them both disconnected here. So right now they're sort of switched off. And then we move on to the main gate itself. So here we have a water tower that has this wire that comes from input A, and this wire that goes down to this sewage pipe right here. And the sewage pipe has a wire coming in from input B. And this electric wire intentionally sort of skirts around this power plant. But if you sort of take a look at the water diagram, the sewage plant is connected via the water system to both the water tower and the sewage pipe. However, since there is no electricity flowing into either right now, this whole system is sort of non-operational. And so if you see, the oil power plant is not operating at the moment because there's not enough water. In fact, there's none at all. And because of the way I've wired this up, the state of this oil power plant relative to the state of these windmills actually acts as an OR gate, and I'm sort of going to try to explain how that works. So if I connect up input A over here, power is going to flow from input A to the water tower and the water tower to the sewage system. And since both water and sewage are going to be operational, this oil power plant is going to start making electricity. And now if I also connect up input B, nothing's really going to change because you're providing power to something that already has power. And same goes if you leave B connected and disconnect A, nothing's really changing. And once you disconnect both of them, you sort of get back to this state where nothing's powered up, and the oil power plant doesn't make any power either. And yeah, so the state of the oil power plant represents an OR gate. And so if we come over to this side of the sort of gate, we have this sewage pipe right here, which empties out into this trench, which contains a windmill. So right now, as you can see, the windmill is operating normally and making power, which is going out via these wires to these two buildings right here, which are going to represent our outputs. And if we take a quick look at the electricity view right here, you can see that there's sort of power flowing through this wire to these two buildings. And the way it's designed this way is because if we were to provide power to this sewage pipe, it's gonna start sort of pumping sewage, and that sewage is gonna flow down this channel and flood this sort of little pond here. And what that's gonna do is flood the windmill. And I mentioned earlier that the windmill doesn't make any power when it's flooded, so the windmill's gonna stop making power. And so that way, we can sort of use it to make a NOT gate, where if there's power flowing in here, then the sewage pipe pumps sewage, and so the windmill doesn't make any power, and these buildings no longer have any power. And we can combine the OR gate here with the NOT gate here to get a NOR gate. And yeah, so I'm gonna try and demonstrate all four states of the NOT gate. So right now we're at 0, 0, both inputs at 0. As you can see, there's no power flowing through either of these wires, and the oil plant is not currently making any power, and our outputs are both receiving power. So let's see how this changes when I connect up input A. So suddenly both the water tower and the sewage pipe both get power, so now there's sort of a water flow under the oil plant, so that starts making power. And now the sewage pipe starts pumping sewage, and you can sort of see the sewage start to flow down here. And there you go. Our windmill is now starting to get flooded, and these buildings have turned red, which means they are no longer connected to the power grid. And this is exactly how we expect our NOR gate to behave. Now let's also connect up input B. Wait a little bit. And as we can see, nothing's really changed. And let's disconnect input A, but we've been connected. Once again, nothing's really changed. And now if we disconnect input B, everything should get back to the state we had before. But unfortunately, because of the way the game works, this is gonna take a couple minutes, so I'm gonna try and time-lapse that so that you don't have to sit through like 5 minutes of just nothing. And there we go. The whole gate is more or less back to the way we started it. This here might flicker a couple more times just as the last bits of the water from here drain out. But yeah, as you probably saw, at some point this power plant went black, so it stopped making power, which means the sewage pump stopped getting power, so it stopped pumping, and the water there was drained off into this little moat right here. And the windmill started making power again. And there we have it, a perfectly functional NOR gate built in Cities Skylines. So as we saw, we were able to create a fully functional NOR gate purely using elements found in Cities Skylines. Now, as much as I'd love to build something slightly more complex using a NOR gate, given that the NOR gate is a universal gate similar to NAND, unfortunately this build as it is, including the city setting up the gate, terraforming the area to look and behave the way I wanted it to, took me over 5 hours already, so I don't really want to spend too much more time on that. But you can combine the outputs and inputs of the NOR gate I demonstrated to create pretty much anything that you can compute using a, as we saw in week 3, the NAND programming language. And so, yeah, that was computing with Cities Skylines, and thanks for watching.